We are so happy to be here with you today. As Michael said, we had an awesome time at the marriage conference this weekend. How many, by show of hands, were here with us this weekend? Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, we shared some laughs, we shared some tears, but we had a blast. And I think more importantly, God showed up. And it was a really great time for us. So, as Michael said, Nate, my beautiful wife, Maggie Blaylock, we are from Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Anybody been to South Dakota? A couple people? Like, yeah, maybe. Don't go in the winter. It's no fun right now. It's beautiful in the summer if you want to come. But we own a private practice counseling agency there in Sioux Falls. And so Maggie's a licensed professional counselor, certified addictions therapist, multiple addictions therapist, sexual addiction, betrayal trauma. I'm a certified life recovery and relationship coach. So we have a practice there where we, day in and day out, get to meet individually and collectively with individuals and couples, just working through stuff like we all have, right? I don't know why that qualifies us to be here on a Sunday morning on your stage talking to you, but you're stuck with us. So either way, we're thrilled to be here. So a couple pictures. So we've got a picture of our family just to kind of give some context. So in the middle there, those are our three awesome kids. Jax, Kendall, Jonah, 13, 11. Will be 8 tomorrow, our youngest. So we'll get home just in time for his birthday. So we got a couple middle schoolers. For any middle school parents in the room, we feel you. We feel the pain. We love the bridge from Sioux Falls, mainly because we love the Wilson family. They have been an instrumental part of our life. Phil was our college pastor in Alabama when we lived there at the time, and so we got to know him. He did our pre-marriage counseling. He did our wedding. And in fact, we have some pictures of that. So this is almost 19 years ago. Maggie and I walking down the aisle. That's Maggie's dad walking her. And that guy in the sun blinded by the light down there is your pastor. That's Pastor Phil. I don't know how we got him to Sioux Falls because I think that was like 3 weeks after he launched the bridge. And you know how he does not like to miss Sundays. But somehow we got him back to South Dakota for that. Look at that young guy. You recognize that guy? This is my best men walking down the aisle, and I think this next one's my favorite picture of him. Just like, not only is he young there, but like the care and concern in his face, like that's the Pastor Phil that we remember. We love them, we love their family. Maggie was Daria's high school basketball coach in Alabama, and so got to coach her for years. So again, thanks for letting us be here.
Yeah, so like Nate said, we own a private practice counseling agency in South Dakota. And a lot of the work that we do really came out of our own life story and our own need for help. And we still see day in and day out clients come to us who just feel a little stuck. Like they're just searching to try to be the best version of themselves. And we see that a lot. We can even fall victim to it too, where we're just searching to try to find the next thing that's going to help move the needle forward in our life, right? And I think we're not alone here because the self-help industry is a $13 billion a year industry in the US alone. So a lot of people are just coming looking for help. Like if we read this book or that, it might give us the answers. And I'm victim to this too. In fact, I had a conversation with someone this weekend about what I was hoping to do with some of my downtime this weekend, being away from kids. And I was like, I'm gonna read a book. And they said, oh, what book? And they were excited to hear what story I was gonna read that was gonna be fun and exciting. And I was like, it's a parenting book. It's just always trying to find the answers. Like we're trying to look for the answers in life. And we just forget sometimes when we go to podcasts or books that we already have the answer, right? If we're believers, we already have the answer because in John 10:10, Jesus straight up tells us, I have come so that you may have life and have it to the full.
Yeah, if I could summarize what Maggie's saying, like we're just looking for life sometimes. And we all can relate, right? We come in here and like the week, we survive the week or try to get to Friday or try to get to the weekend, but sometimes we don't feel really alive, right? So we're gonna take a look a little bit at what God's word says about how to do that. How do we find real life? And I think there's some real applicable things that we can take away from it. So we're in a rooted series here. So we're taking a pause out of studying this week the life of Moses. But you guys, this has everything to do with being rooted, right? Things that have roots are truly alive. There's one word or one subject in the Bible that is synonymous with the word life. So when we hear the word life, we often see this word show up. And that is the word light, L-I-G-H-T, light. So there's over 100 verses in the Bible that talk about light. So we're going to dig into that topic just a little this morning. And we're going to go all the way back and look at the origin of light and darkness. So we're going to go back to the first 5 verses in the Bible. So if you have your Bibles and you want to follow along, Genesis 1 through 5. I'm going to throw the verses up here and read them with you. These are verses we probably all know and have heard lots of times. Follow along with me. Genesis 1 through 5. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was formless and empty, and the darkness covered the deep waters, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the surface of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw that the light was good. He separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day and darkness night. Evening passed and the morning came, marking the first day. So imagine with me like the complete darkness that was there in verse 2. Nothing was there, and God spoke light in existence. Because he knew that it had to be there for something good to come after it. Now, I used to be a high school science teacher about 12 years ago, which...
He has a really, really sexy science Stanley voice that he likes to use.
Sometimes Stanley the scientist comes out.
And Phil said he would really like to hear Nate use this voice.
No, thank you.
So.
Sometimes when we're doing homework with our kids, Stanley the scientist comes out, and my kids hate it. Maggie loves it, so I'm not going to do it because I don't want her to get all worked up this morning. But listen, because I was a science teacher, I have a little bit of general knowledge about light and its makeup. Okay, so light's incredibly unique because light exists in these little tiny packets called photons.
What?
Photons.
Yeah.
There we go. There it is. So you guys may have heard that word from science growing up or whatever, but let me remind you what that is. Okay, so light's incredibly unique because it shows properties of both waves. So reflecting off of a larger light source and particles. So we think about light generally like reflecting off the sun or a larger light source. But light actually exists in tiny particles. So light is its own thing. It is, in fact, the building block of life. So did you know in the verses that we just read, when God created light, that was actually 4 days before the sun was created. Okay? So God spoke light into existence because he knew that it had to be the building block for all good things and all life to come after that. So where life is desired, light is required. If you're writing things down, write that down this morning, okay? Where life is desired, where we desire true life, light has to be there. So let's take a second and think about that. Apart from light, nothing good really grows. Like what kinds of things grow in the dark, right? Mold, fungus. Things that generally aren't good grow in the dark. And if we need to experience life in our life, we have to have light. Genesis 1 through 5 set the stage for that, okay? In fact, the first song we sang this morning, I love the line that says, "You spoke and chaos fell in line." Like the verses we just read is the first time that happened. The chaos of darkness was there and God spoke light in existence. So this picture of light that we looked at in Genesis here both foretells and parallels the coming of Jesus. And we're going to look at one other passage that kind of parallels this exactly, just in a little bit different way. So here's some context. We're going to look at Isaiah chapter 9 and the first couple verses of chapter 9 if you're following along. But for some context, in chapter 8, Isaiah is giving a warning to the people who are living in figurative darkness at the time. They've abandoned God's teachings and they are in the dark. Now, not literal darkness like we see in Genesis, but figuratively, he's saying, you guys are in the dark, okay? So let's look at those verses. Isaiah 9:1. Nevertheless, that time of darkness and despair will not go on forever. The land of Zebulun and Naphtali will be humbled, but there will be a time in the future when Galilee of the Gentiles, which lies along the road that runs between the Jordan and the sea, will be filled with glory. Check this out. The people who walk in darkness will see a great light. For those who live in a land of deep darkness, or death's shadow, he calls it, a light will shine. So again, do we see this parallel that's happening? So in Genesis, literal darkness everywhere. God spoke light in existence so that good things could come after it, right? So that life could exist when he was creating that. In Isaiah, figurative darkness everywhere. But what he was foretelling there, a few verses after that, he talks about this baby boy that will come years later and be born in a manger that was our great light. That had to be the foundation so that good things could come and grow after it. I love the parallel happening there in those two verses. So, all right, we looked some passages, cool, check. What does that mean for us? Okay. I think as a church, for us individually, this means a couple things. The first thing, and if you're writing things down or like want to record things today, there's a couple points that I want you to write down. Number one, living in the light means that light must be your foundation. Living in the light means that light must be your foundation. Now you may hear that and be like, yeah, Nate, that's pretty elementary. I get that, okay? But I don't want to pass that over because there's somebody here, you may be visiting or you may come here every week and you need to be reminded or hear that. Your life will forever be in the darkness in some ways and not be able to experience true life if you have not accepted the work of light, God's work on the cross as the foundation of your life. You will forever be in the dark if that is not there. Light has to be the foundation. If you want to feel alive, if you're feeling stuck today, light has to be the foundation of that. And therefore, God's work on the cross as the foundation has to be there.
So I think for those of us who are already believers, there's a second application here. And that's just kind of a call to go a little bit deeper into the light. And this concept is just authenticity. So we're talking about being authentic with God and being authentic with others. Now, what does it mean to brace authenticity with God and what we're talking about? For us, this has come from our own really hard life experiences, and which we were really forced to just be super real with God. We had to break through the pattern of elementary childlike faith with God where it was just roses and sunshine, but times where there was tears and anger and pain. Moments in life where I had to be like, God, I don't even know if you're real. Like, are you here? But you guys, in those moments when I would like question it and audibly say that to him, would be like a day later, I'd see a sign of him. As I brought to him like pain, and it was like, what the heck, Lord, I'm so mad at you. Like, I thought that this is what you wanted for me, and then we were faithful and we did it, and then it fell apart. We had to bring all of that to him, and in those moments, when we got past the surface level prayers and got really real with God, those are the moments in my life that I can truly say, like, God actually proved himself. He actually showed up. He didn't make an easy, sweet little Sunday school life, but he showed up and he was real. The other part of authenticity is just experiencing that with community on a deeper level. Man, we were so good at coming into church and being happy and smiling and we're fine, we're great, and having it all together. And our relationships and our faith changed when we started to just surround ourselves with people who we could really do deep life with, where we could say things like, man, marriage is really hard today. I mean, and it is, you guys. Like, if anyone's saying it's not hard, they're lying, right? It is hard. We led the marriage retreat and almost had a fight pulling up into the parking lot because I saw that little mini church and I was like, you took
us to the wrong church.
I said, you put in the wrong address.
The marriage conference can't be there. We survived.
And then the second day, I wanted Starbucks. We didn't get Starbucks and I accidentally said it from the stage.
Super helpful, really helpful.
Today we got Starbucks. It's like, marriage is hard and we have to be authentic when these things hit, right? Marriage is hard. I want to karate punch one of my children in the throat today. I'm not going to because I value CPS not being at my house, but it's hard. Life is really hard and we need to live with people where we can say these things and one, be like given grace, but then pointed back towards Christ in a really gentle way. So I just want to tell you guys, like, if you're sitting in here and you feel stuck or like life is hard, that is okay, right? I mean, there's people on the verge of divorce, and there's pain, and there's hurt, and we have heartache all around. And this should be the exact place where you feel like you can bring that and talk to someone and get real. And I have gotten to know a lot of your church staff members, and I keep hearing over and over again that this is a place where we do that, where we embrace that. So if you're visiting here, know that you are in the right place if you are a mess.
Yeah. So yeah, amen, that's right. So again, like living in the light means light must be our foundation. Living in the light means we must embrace authenticity. That's with God and with others, okay? As Maggie said, like, it's okay not to be okay. We cannot just embrace that in theory. Be like, yeah, that's great for everyone else. But keep the places in our life where we're struggling a little bit quiet. Our challenge is to stop pretending and to keep focusing on being real. And again, we love the Bridge Fellowship because that is the motto here, right? Show up, just be here. You don't have to be anything specific. Just be here and be real. Now, this is something for us that unfortunately we've learned about the hard way. You know, for those that were at the marriage conference this weekend, you got to hear a pretty in-depth look at our story. And for those that weren't here, let me just kind of give a high-level overview of kind of how we got to be here. So for me, I grew up as a pastor's kid. I was a PK in a Southern Baptist church in the South. And so as a good pastor's kid, like I had two parents that loved me really well, but there wasn't a lot of space in our household or our family system to talk about what wasn't going well. There was kind of this implied thing of like, man, people are always watching. You got to have it all together. So I got really good at showing up every week and smiling and being fine, but not struggling ever. I didn't know how to do that, but we all struggle, right? I was at church every time the doors were open. When I was 13, I even felt the call to the ministry in some way, to whatever that meant. But in my life, something else happened about the age of 13 that was really impactful. I was exposed for the first time to pornography. And that was an area for me that was gonna solidly be locked in the dark. I didn't know how to open that area of my life and the challenges with it up to anybody. Not God in an authentic way, not other people for sure. And so it stayed locked in the dark. And what we just learned about what kinds of things grow in the dark, they grow rapidly in the dark. And I had secrets in my life that I kept locked away. For me, this area grew and grew and grew. And I kept telling myself, like, man, when I am in a relationship, this will change. When I get maybe a different career path and I feel happier, this will go away and this will change. Or like, when I get married, this area of my life won't be there anymore. So I'm just gonna keep working through this on my own until then. But it didn't happen. And for me, this continued to grow and became my coping mechanism of choice. And for me, it grew ultimately into a full-blown sexual addiction. And I found myself in a place that I never thought I would be, looking for pleasures wherever I could find them in a way to cope. And that includes crossing lines I never thought I would cross, including secret relationships and affairs outside of my marriage. I'll never forget March 25th, 2012. We had a knock on our door, and it was somebody who showed up with some information for Maggie that began to unravel the secret life that I was living. What was in the dark began in that moment for the first time to come out into the light.
So as you can imagine, for me, that discovery was brutal, right? What I thought was a low-level occasional use of pornography when we first got married was way more. And I thought we had actually dealt with that. We had gone to 1 or 2 counseling sessions. We had gotten blockers. We had done all the things. And so I was shocked. It was brutal. I later found out that what I was dealing with was called betrayal trauma. And the symptoms that I had in the weeks and months that followed were similar to PTSD. My brain always raced. I began to be the world's best investigator, to search through things and try to piece details together. I struggled to eat or sleep.
My emotions raged in a way that I did not think was even capable of or possible of me. And in a nutshell, my soul was crushed, right? Things were really bad. And I knew enough that I needed to reach out to people. And so we called our pastor at the time over, and he came. And we were in the deep South in Alabama. And I grew up Catholic and had gotten saved, and throughout the years, I was ready to be done with faith. I was ready to walk away. I invited my pastor over, and I had even rehearsed it. Like, if this guy tells me some cliche about I need to forgive him because Christ forgave me, I could like see myself throwing the kids in the car and peeling out of the driveway with my middle fingers up in the air and like, deuces, man, I'm never coming back. But this guy was incredible, and he just really ministered to us where we were. He talked to me about boundaries. He gave me the permission that I may have to leave my marriage at some point. The boundaries are good and healthy. But the one thing that he like impressed upon me was, it does not matter what you end up doing. Like, you're free to go, but you better every day just seek God and ask God what he has for you and what he wants for you and your life and your marriage. Or walking in that disobedience, you'll probably have similar consequences as Nate, right? And so I just began this process where I began this deep level of authenticity with God, where I would just beg him. I would beg him for ways to feel released from my marriage. I would, as Nate got into recovery, I would pray and be like, God, give him a relapse so I can have a sign that it's good, I can go. And for a period of time, we were separated for a long period of time, and there was a ton of counseling, and we're really kind of short selling the recovery process that we underwent by being quick here. But you guys, as I brought my hurt and pain to God, like, he showed up. He would give little mercies daily. There was one night with a 4-week-old that I prayed for sleep, and I slept 8 hours with a 4-week-old. It was like God had come and nursed the baby in the night. There was just mercies like this along the way. And I really felt like I could hear a whisper of like, just watch and wait. And I sat in that for a long time, angry, bitter, hurt. But God just kept showing up, and he kept showing us signs. And over time, I really, truly saw Nate's life change, mostly from a distance. But as I gave little and little and little to him, like, God had changed him and worked in our lives and created a miracle. The other thing that we did early on is I took a phone call from Phil. And I was so scared to talk to him. I mean, he had married us. He had done our premarital counseling. He had ministered to us through college. And every bit of me was so scared and filled with shame that we had disappointed him. But he was so loving and so grace-filled, you guys. He connected us with another couple. I mean, he's like, I don't have much to offer you, but I can get you in touch with this couple that is in our church who you need to talk to. They have a similar story, but they're ahead of you in it. And that level of authentic realness offered us an absolute lifeline of hope. Like, okay, we are not alone here. We are not the only people to deal with this. There could be hope. There is treatment. There is a way forward. And I just know without a shadow of a doubt, without being rooted in God and without have been ministered to in an authentic way, we would not be sitting here today talking to you guys.
Yeah. When my secret sin was exposed to the light, it was the most painful thing that I have ever gone through. I mean, I was sitting there facing the consequences of Maggie and many others that I had hurt in a huge way. You see, I had secrets in my heart that I left in the dark. I wasn't authentic with God or other people. Where true life is desired, where we desire to be alive, light is required. I again love that this today is in the middle of your Rooted series, because I needed roots in my life, both spiritually and relationally, in order to build something that was more alive than I had ever experienced before. I wonder, as I'm talking, are there any areas in your heart or life that you feel like a tug or a pull from God, just being like, maybe take a step into the light with that. Find community. Find somebody that you can talk to and just be like, man, I'm struggling. I'm stuck. I don't know what this is, but I can't get out. Be real today as a step to begin to get the foundation of your life back into the light so you can feel more alive than you feel. Step into the light.
So this morning we want to just kind of bring this concept of light and darkness and authentic living to life with just another story that happened in our lives. This story actually started about 3 years before our marriage fell apart. And we had both gotten new jobs in a town that was about 20 minutes south of where we were living. So we started the process of searching for a new home. And this is not as fun of a process as I thought it would be. There was just nothing there. We searched and searched and searched in our price range. And like a dumb young couple, we couldn't find anything we liked in our price range, so we increased our price range. And we found a house that was just outside of our budget price range, and we made the lowest ball offer we could. It was accepted. We got this house. It felt like a dream home to us. We thought we were on top of the world. We had just gotten new jobs, a brand new house, and we were expecting our first child. So we move into this house, and shortly after moving in, it just did not take on our smell. It was just a little funky. And we had no idea what it was. We just thought it was a new build. I had never lived in a brand new home that had just been built. But that was our first sign that this house would actually turn out to be a disaster. A little bit into living there, we were living in Mobile, Alabama, the deep south. We woke up one day and it was so hot in the house, the air conditioning had stopped working. It's only a few months old, so this is weird. So we call a repairman because we are probably the most unhandy people alive.
Why you gotta sell me out like that in front of all these people?
Because we're trying to be authentic.
That's fair. That's fair. I can fix a few things, but
with the help of YouTube. And a million pauses and rewinds when we do it.
Correct.
But so we call a repairman, and he comes and he looks and he pulls out the coils and he's like, this is really weird. And if there's any air conditioning repair people in here, man, he pulled it out and the coils were completely corroded through. He's like, this does not happen. This is not normal. And I read somewhere that it has something to do with your drywall, maybe. Which that, I know if you're looking at me like, that's exactly what we thought. We had that same thought. So we did what any young couple would do. We ignored the issue.
Nothing.
We did nothing. But then a few months later, a dishwasher stopped working. So we call, it's on warranty, a new house. We call, they come out. A repairman can't figure it out. So he says, whatever, we'll replace it. A few months later, the dishwasher goes out again. He comes, they replace it. We're like, weird. We don't know what's going on, but we just ignore it, keep going with life. Then we lost a fridge out in the garage. We just started losing appliances. And there started to be weird black rings and dots on anything that was metal. And then one day we got a pamphlet on the door that was from an attorney, and it said Chinese drywall is a thing, and you might have it in your home and call this number. And again, we did what young, dumb couples would do. We thought it was a hoax and that someone was trying to scam us, and we threw it away and ignored the issue. But a lawyer actually came and knocked on the door one day, and he was like, hey, you guys really got to listen to this situation. And he told us about what Chinese drywall was, and that our neighborhood was filled with homes that had Chinese drywall. So Chinese drywall is just this issue that
Has anybody heard of Chinese drywall here? Somebody? Okay.
Most people have not heard of it. After Hurricane Katrina, there was a shortage of drywall in the US, as there was tons of homes being rebuilt or built for the first time. They were importing drywall from China because there was a drywall shortage in the US, which normally is a fine thing, but in this case, these drywall companies were making their drywall improperly. And when it reacted to humidity, which we lived in Mobile, it emitted sulfuric gas into the air. And if you remember from science class, I wish we could get you to do that voice. Sulfur is the experiment day when you come into class and it smells like rotten eggs.
That's the sulfur day experiment. And so even though our house didn't smell like rotten eggs, it made sense that this smell thing is here, and it was literally corroding the metal that we had in the home. And instantly our home was a lemon. Now, I had not found out about what was going on with Nate yet. We were just expecting a new baby, and our house was instantly worthless. We couldn't sell it. Our insurance wouldn't help us. We couldn't fix it. And it was absolutely worthless.
You see, we had this home of our dreams from the outside. High ceilings, crown molding, granite countertops, beautiful. But what was hidden behind the dark was literally corroding the walls from the inside out. And if that's not a picture of both what was going on in my life and what can happen in our lives when we just aren't authentic, when we're not real, we keep things locked away and hidden in the dark and try to deal with it the best way we can, but it has an opportunity to corrode things from the inside out. We lost a ton of value in the home, right? Instantly, like Maggie said, the home was worthless. So to finish the first half of our story, we were like completely helpless here. Like we considered filing for bankruptcy. Like we had no outs here related to this house. So we began to just like over months be like, God, can you come through in some way here? Somehow, miraculously, we got selected in a pilot program. There were like one of 30 homes to be selected in this pilot program out of, mind you, like 750,000 homes in the US that were dealing with this at the time. And they were going to come in and remediate the home by tearing it down, literally to the studs, treating the studs, redoing all the wiring and rebuilding the home to try to get a cost estimate to see if they could go across the Southeast US and fix this issue. So we were so lucky to be able to do that. So that happened miraculously, but then we moved to Sioux Falls when life fell apart in 2012. And we were in Sioux Falls, and for a couple years, our house couldn't sell after that, right? Who wants to buy a house that once had Chinese drywall? It's like a flooded engine, right? Like it had been repaired, but we couldn't sell it. And so we finally, about 2 years later, we sold it. We lost a ton of value in the house and then began looking for a new home in Sioux Falls. Our price range was so much different than it was before because our financial situation was so much different. And so we searched for a house, looked at a bunch. We finally landed on a home, okay? And so this is the home we landed on. And
you're impressed, I can tell.
Yeah, it wasn't the home that maybe we thought we would ever land on. In fact, we were both really disappointed of just like, I guess this is what we can afford. See, this home was a foreclosure and it was in pretty rough shape. Let me tell you how bad a shape it was. So it was foreclosed, it was empty for 2 years. There was literally an open window that a cat was coming in and out the entire 2 years of the house and living
there was a live animal in it when we took possession.
When we took possession. So you can imagine how bad this thing smelled. I'm not a fan of cats anyways. I'm definitely not a fan of cat pee. And so this house was awful. So I literally molded in the corners where it had just been, peed on for long periods of time. I don't know how to say that properly, right? This next picture is like the picture of the master bedroom. Fortunately for you guys, this picture doesn't smell. If it did, you'd be gagging out there. You guys, it was awful. But we had tried to see what maybe it could be. And I had a realtor and a wife, thankfully, that was like, well, we could maybe turn this into something one day. So as Maggie said, I'm not super handy. I was super naive. In fact, I remember getting a dumpster. Like the first thing we did, I was like, I need a dumpster, pull some of this stuff out. I was like, you can get a small or a large. I'm a pretty smart guy. I was like, I'll get the large anyways, even though I think the small is probably enough. You guys, I knew I was in over my head when I think it was the second week we had gone through our fourth large dumpster. We just kept pulling things out. Like we'd pull up the carpet, still smelled.
We
pull
were
up
so
the
very naive.
Floor, still smelled. Pull up the subfloor, still smelled. Put like Kills primer everywhere in the whole house, it still smelled. We ended up having to cut 2 feet up on the walls around the entire house just to try to get the smell out of the house. It was gross. It was awful. But over time, it began slowly over months and years of hard work to transform into something that was different. You can see as they scroll through some of the pictures, as we began to put in the work to repair it, over time, what it began to transform into. And literally, it turned into the home of our dreams. We still live there today. We love it. We have no plans to leave. You see, like, this house is super modest from the outside. It's a 1950s home. So, like, as soon as you pull up in the driveway that's all bumpy with cracks, you can see all the imperfections. But what's beautiful to us is that, like, we know what's there, right? We've gutted it, and we know what's there. And there's not secret things hiding behind the walls anymore that are corroding things from the inside out. What a picture of living authentically, right? When we try to cover our struggles, what happens is what happened with our first home, right? It doesn't work.
I think that one of the things that I just love the most about our house, and it's a whole level of authenticity to show you pictures inside my house, but I just love that we've actually genuinely inspected everything from the inside out, right? Which is such a reminder for us, and it parallels how we should be living with Christ. And it's just a reminder of Psalm 139, 23 through 24, which just says, "Search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. Point out anything in me that offends you and lead me along the path of everlasting life." This is such a great verse that depicts what living authentically with God actually looks like. And the thing is, like, I would never, when I look at these pictures, like, I would never have called this my dream home, ever, right? And I was pretty devastated when we had to land on this home. But it's a reminder for me that what God has in store for us and his plan for us is so much better than anything we could have ever picked ourselves.
Yeah. Light equals life, darkness equals death. For me, the darkness that I was secretly living in eventually destroyed my entire life. But here's the crazy thing. The whole time that was going on in my life, I was on stage every Sunday at a church leading worship. I was an FCA leader at the school that I was at the time. I was in a community group. We were in a community group every Sunday. We'd show up in a life group and live real with each other. Those things in and of themselves do not help us live in the light. They do not mean that we are living in the light. It takes us being authentic in those spaces to be able to be real. If you're feeling stuck today, if you're feeling like, man, this is all it is, this is a call today to try to embrace living in the light, both with God and with other people, more authentically. Guys, God breathes life into what was once dead. This weekend was a big milestone for me in my life and in our life and in our journey. You see, the last time that I was here at the Bridge Fellowship was 12 years ago. It was about 3 weeks after everything happened with us. We weren't talking at the time. We were separated. I was waiting for divorce papers. I remember I sat right back there in that corner, was here for Matt and Daria's wedding. And I cried through the whole service. I remember just being filled with shame and overcome of, like, I've destroyed everything in my life. And I don't know how to put it back together. And if you would have told me that 12 years later I'd be back up on this stage helping other marriages, I'd have told you that you were nuts. But God breathes life into what was once dead. And he breathed life into our life and my life and our marriage in a new way that I never thought could be possible when we took steps to embrace living in the light and living authentically before God and wrestling with him in those moments. He became real to me. From all the head knowledge I had growing up in the church, it began to become new to me in a real way. And as I began to have other people come around me and guys in my life that be like, we're gonna talk real. What's really going on this week? Learn to live authentically. God began to breathe life into what was dead, into something beautiful, and give my life purpose in a new way. I don't know where you're at today or what you're wrestling with or what you're walking in here with. But I just wonder if we could just take a couple minutes and you could bow your head and close your eyes as I wrap us up.